Littler being around is a good thing for Humphries. How many points could he possibly get? Is he going to wind up with 52 points? He could even get more than that. This could be a record that he sets that will never be beaten. 10 points in a couple of weeks over the space of, say, a 3-week period can make all the difference.
Who do you like the look of for the top 4? Hello, welcome along to the latest edition of the Tungsten Talk here at the MODUS Super Series. We're having a look back at the first half of this year's Premier League. It's Luke Littler that leads the way after night 8 in Newcastle, winning 4 of the 8 nights so far. He's very much becoming the dominant force in this year's competition, is the defending champion. Somebody that's been working on Premier League nights on the radio is the asset Paul Nicholson, and it's getting to a point now where it's becoming borderline dominance from Luke Littler in this year's Premier League.
Yeah, we haven't seen many campaigns like this before. And in the modern guise of this format, we haven't seen this before. Because the record is 4 nightly wins in a season. And Luke's already got 4. So this is the most dominant season that we've seen. And if he goes on for the rest of this Premier League campaign all the way through to the end of May before the playoffs, without getting another nightly win, I will be flabbergasted. But so far, so very good. His 180s have been astonishing. He's got twice as many as anybody else. And this is the epitome of dominance.
100 180s by the end of week 8 is a ridiculous stat, isn't it?
I think because he's played a lot of matches, he's getting a lot of opportunities, but it's the ratio per leg that gets you looking at your screens thinking, is this a typo? He's just got this incredible knack of turning up in a large arena and thinking, this is like practice to me. He is so much better on a regular basis than everybody in this Premier League. Now, we have seen multiple winners over the course of the last few weeks, but he's the one that's more likely to get more 180s, more big checkouts, and of course, he has found his way to getting a perfect leg as well.
Is it a surprise that he is as dominant as he is at this stage of the Premier League? Was this something that perhaps was preconcepted before the start of the season?
I don't think we were expecting maybe as much from Gerwyn Price. Maybe we're expecting stuff from Luke Humphries, which we've had, but maybe a little bit more from a few other parties. I mean, if you look at the Premier League lineup, the thing that blows my mind the most, apart from Littler's dominance, is the fact that over the course of the start of the 2025 season away from the Premier League, there's only one person who hasn't won a title, and that's Michael van Gerwen. So that is a surprising thing, but it's not like Michael's been playing poorly in this Premier League. He's just been chipping away and doing the right things in his first games. That's where he's been at his strongest.
Is that the key to getting to the playoffs then? Making sure that look, you're not going to win every week, but every single week, if you can, just get that odd win here and there. Just keep accumulating points on the board.
Well, let's break it down then, shall we? Because it's 16 qualifying weeks. Week 17 is obviously the playoffs. So when it comes to accumulating points, if you have 16 quarter-final victories, that's 32 points. That's going to be fine. So what Michael's doing at the minute is very sustainable. But it won't sit right with him that he hasn't won a night yet. And he hasn't been winning a great deal of semi-finals either. So the grand scheme of things in winning a Premier League is making the top 4 and then striking at the O2 in London. At the minute, it looks fine. But there could be a time where if he stops winning quarterfinals, things could get a bit sticky.
5 semi-finals, 1 final in his 8 weeks so far. So as you say, it's a very good record. But I suppose with Michael, because of his CV, because of what he's done, and I suppose some of the form that he showed at the World Championship as well, there's always going to be big expectations on his shoulders, regardless of where he is, to be right at the very top of things.
Listen, when you're a 7-time champion, people are expecting you to get more. It's a bit like when Phil Taylor was a 10-time world champion. They're thinking, well, how many is he actually going to get? Nobody was thinking he wasn't going to get an 11th. They were thinking, can he get 20? And when it comes to Premier League darts, Michael, when he was picking up his last one, we were saying, well, he's going to get 10. At the minute, there's no guarantee of that. There's no guarantee that he will get through Humphries or Price or Littler or someone else on the way to that 8th Premier League this year, next year, or the year after that. There are no guarantees in this sport Because if we're drip-fed more talent like Littler and Humphreys and other people coming through, titles are not guaranteed whatsoever.
In terms of Gerwyn Price, look, it was a controversial pick by some, him even being in the Premier League. We know that his relationship with the competition has been a little bit hot and cold in the past. But does it look like a more refreshed Gerwyn Price, someone that's a little bit revitalised again this year?
He's refreshed not because of Premier League inclusion. He's refreshed because of Grand Slam of Darts not actually being there. Let's put it that way. Because he didn't qualify. I think not being at a tournament that he has loved so much has worked out really well for him, because it allowed him to sit at home in Markham and Wales and watch everybody else trying to get a trophy that he's won 3 times. And I don't think that sat well with him. It revitalised him in the right sort of way. That's what we can say from the outside anyway. A decent World Championship and inclusion in the Premier League was a surprise to a lot of people, because he was the Welsh number 2 when he was included. Johnny Clayton was higher ranked than Gezi. But they decided to go for the person who maybe has a bit more commercial savvy and a bigger social media presence. That was entirely up to the PDC to do that, and of course Sky Sports. But what we can say in hindsight now is that including him in this Premier League seems to have been the right thing to do, because he has been very competitive, maybe with the exception of Newcastle.
And in terms of his season so far, the 2 wins that he got, he looked at times imperious in them both.
Arguably the best we've ever seen him. The scoring ability was there. The doubles, especially with tops and 12s and 10s, that's where he makes his money. It's looked very, very good. For a start of the season, you can't complain. He's won Premier League nights. He's won on the PDC Pro Tour as well. And as we're recording this, he's about to get ready to go to Risa. So don't be surprised if he gets another title at the International Darts Open.
We speak about players chipping away and constantly chipping away points. Rob Cross is another one of them. Has only lost in the quarterfinals twice, 6 semi-finals to his name, but he's got no further. What he is constantly doing, as you say, that kind of recipe for success, just keep chipping away the points. And if you can then get a little bit deeper, then that's when you really are putting yourself in the frame.
If there's anybody who really benefits from being in the Premier League when it comes to overall form, it's Rob Cross, because he needs reps. He's someone, if he takes a week or 2 off, he'll probably take another month to get back to where he was. He needs to constantly throw all the time to stay sharp, which is why the Premier League works for him. He's a former finalist, and he is somebody else who was touted as, is he going to be in this Premier League? Well, a lot of us in the media said he was fortunate to be in the top 4 in the rankings, getting an automatic slot, because if he was 5th or 6th, a lot of people thought he wouldn't have been included. But a bit like some other people who have had decent Premier League starts, he's justified everything, because he's proven to be very, very difficult to beat. And his biggest moment was in Cardiff. Imagine what it's like playing against the Welsh player in the Premier League in Cardiff, which is one of the most vociferous crowds, albeit one of the smallest crowds. But you're sitting on 170, your opponent's sitting on 36, in front of his people, and you've got the audacity to find a big fish finish. That's what Rob Cross can do. And it was a reminder to the world of just what he's capable of.
In terms of players whose picks perhaps raise 1 or 2 eyebrows, Nathan Aspinall, I suppose probably more than anybody else, got the headlines for that. How would you say he's acquitted himself so far this campaign?
I think he's done wonderfully. I think at the start of the season, there were so many question marks about, does he deserve the pick? Does he have the capabilities to win weekly titles on Thursday nights? Is he going to be fit enough through the campaign, because he's going to be throwing a lot of darts over the first 5 months of the season? I suppose from winning perspective, he hasn't won on a Premier League stage yet, but he won at Göttingen on the European Tour with some stunning stuff. But his ability to chip away and make finals, you know, he's picked up a few points, but his tenacity will get him close. Someone who's made the final of this competition before, he knows how to pace himself throughout the 16 to 17 weeks. But he's going to have to dig really deep to get to the top 4. And I think, realistically, as much as he would like to be Premier League champion in 2025, I think if he makes the playoffs, that would be a win in his eyes.
And are we seeing with him, kind of similar to Gerwyn Price, actually that the Premier's been used as a tool to improve his form elsewhere? Obviously, we've just recently seen him win a European tour in Göttingen.
I think that's fair. What the Premier League does, and I go back to what Simon Whitlock used to say about this, and this is so accurate, that if you're involved on Thursday nights, you get to the arena somewhere around about 3:30, 4 o'clock of your first game, get there with a lot of time to spare, get your media out the way, and you've got 2 or 3 hours to get yourself sharp for this campaign on a Thursday. And what that does is that relieves the pressure of having to practice on a Tuesday and a Wednesday. Effectively, if you're a Premier League player, your weekend is a Tuesday, Wednesday, because Monday is usually travelling back from a European Tour event or potentially a Pro Tour weekend. So what this Thursday gives you is the ability to be sharp for the Thursday, but also sharpness for what follows. And that is what people like Nathan Aspinall and Rob Cross are able to do.
Right, we're going to break for now. We'll talk a little bit more about the starts of this year's Premier League and the second half of this Tungsten talk here at the MODUS Super Series. Welcome back to the second part of the Tungsten talk here at the MODUS Super Series, where we're looking back at the first half of the Premier League season so far. Let's look at the bottom couple of players then in the group. Chris Dobie, is he the one that maybe out of all the players in that bottom quartet can maybe feel the most hard done by in terms of performances that he put in terms of results getting back?
Yeah, I think if you'd said to Chris after winning a Pro Tour event really early in the season that he would be in this position, he'd think that's not going to be me. But I think what we've had thrown at us in this Premier League campaign is just how well you can play without success. Stephen Bunting and Chris Dobie accentuate that, but I think Chris would admit that at times he's not been at his brilliant best on the Premier League stages, and he's been exposed by some of the premier players. And what I mean by that is the people who are succeeding and putting in these massive numbers like Price, Littler and Humphreys. This is really hard. There's nowhere to hide. It's as if you want to play your best, but if you have 2 legs off, that's it. You're out. It's as simple as that. And he found that out when he played Luke Humphreys in Newcastle. He didn't play poorly at all. He was playing some good stuff in there, but he's up against the world #1 in front of his audience. And it just goes to show there's no place to hide.
What about poor Stephen Bunting?
Some of his numbers have been really good. I feel really sorry for Stephen. He's thrown everything he's got at the first half of this Premier League campaign. He's lost to every player. He hasn't won one. But some of his averages have been very encouraging. This is one of the most unfortunate Premier League campaigns to date. And I think everybody should get behind Stephen and say, do you know what? Keep your chin up, Stephen. It's not like you're doing much wrong. You are constantly knocking on the door, but somebody keeps locking it. It's not that he's playing badly. It's that his opponents have almost earmarked him as the sacrificial lamb.
Well, his opponents on average are averaging 103.4 against him over the course of the campaign. That pretty much sums it up, doesn't it?
It does. Welcome to 2025. This is not the 2005 or 2015 Premier League where sometimes a 93, 94 average is going to be good enough. Now, there are going to be games where you will find that, but in the quarterfinals, what we're seeing is that everybody's getting off to a good start. They're not stuttering when they're playing their first game of the night. They're ready. And at this point of the season, we're in late March now, we're going into early April, everybody's had a chance to get rid of the cobwebs and the rust, and nobody is struggling with their game.
So if we look ahead to the second half of the season then, are we kind of confident in the fact that the 2 Luke should do enough to get into the playoffs now?
Well, we know that Littler's going to be there. He's got, was it 26 points?
Yep, 12 is the cut-off at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's simply ridiculous. I mean, how many points could he possibly get? Is he going to wind up with 52 points? He could even get more than that. This could be a record that he sets that will never be beaten. It's simply ridiculous. But Littler will be there. I'll be flabbergasted if Humphreys isn't. His form over the last few weeks has not been brilliant, but a better night in Newcastle where he made the final, so that will make him feel good. Now, he's going to be picking and choosing his European Tour events like Littler, so he's going to make sure that he's got plenty of energy for the second half, which I think is wise. But, yeah, I would assume that those 2 will be safe. Iceman, I'm going to go for him to be in there. But if Van Gerwen's not going to be making finals on a regular basis, he could be the person who's looking over his shoulder.
But is that on the basis as well that other players got to step up to the plate and they're going to have to find a way of overcoming one of the Lukes and winning nights? Is that going to be the key? If Van Gerwen is going to drop out, somebody else is going to have to do something special.
Yes. If you look at the likes of Aspinall and Cross, they're going to have to start winning some nights. Now, we're very soon going to Rotterdam, and that is where Nathan Aspinall has won the last 2. So he's going to go back there thinking, I'm after the hat-trick here. This is not Michael Van Gerwen's Premier League night, this is mine. So imagine if he does do the hat-trick and gets the 5 points there. If he was to double up and get 5 points somewhere else, like Berlin, for instance, who knows? 10 points in a couple of weeks over the space of, say, a 3-week period can make all the difference. And
with someone like Gerwyn Price, for example, it's kind of all or nothing. He either wins nights or he goes out first round. I suppose for him, it's going to be finding that little bit more consistency, just chipping away at wins.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, you look at what Michael Van Gerwen's doing, hasn't won a night yet, but he's gradually chipping away by getting the 2 points for making the semi-finals. Now, if you win the semi-final, you only get 1 further point. So if you are going to have a good night, make it a win. If you're going to have a bad night, I suppose a bad night should be making the semis at this point. If you're losing in the quarterfinals, be prepared to look around and think, who's ready to pounce on me?
In terms of the bottom 3, Aspinall is on 10 points, Dobie on 5 bundles. What kind of job are they going to have to do in the second half of the season to try and get a playoff spot?
In relation to the bottom 2, Bunting's going to have to go on a rampage. He knows this. I think having a few days off after Newcastle will be critical for him to try and reassess his goals. Maybe plot, what can I do? What is possible? Just reiterate to yourself that, hang on a minute, if I win 3 nights in a row, which is something that's very capable of, that's 15 points. That would get him back in the reckoning. This is not out of the question. Say the positive things to yourself. If I can have a rampage over the next 3 or 4 weeks and gain, 15 points, for example, then we're going to be talking about one of the greatest Premier League comebacks ever. So Dobie's going to have to do the same thing, even though he's got a better points total at this point. But winning nights, that's what they need to start doing.
Does he also need it as well for his confidence going into the latter part of the season as well? Because we've seen it in the past where players have had poor Premier League campaigns and then the rest of the season takes a hit as a result.
I think you can compartmentalise the Premier League away from ranking action. We know that Stephen has won on the tour this season in Bahrain, but that was pre-Premier League, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. When he went to Belgium, Stephen played better darts on the European Tour stage, and that gave his confidence a nice little injection. But what we're starting to see is, for instance, Chris Dobie, when he's gone to European Tours, he hasn't had success yet. So maybe the Premier League has had an adverse effect on his Pro Tour form. So you've got to figure out that Premier League is one thing. You know how in Premier League football, people focus on the league, but when they go to the FA Cup, it's like a refreshing break. That's what you've got to do with Premier League darts. Focus on that on Thursday nights, and then think of everything else as different.
And I suppose for someone like Chris Dobie as well, is it a case of maybe going back to the floor and rediscovering that touch? Because that was what kind of was the key to his success last year, wasn't it? Doing well on the floor, and then towards the end of the year, it translated on the stage.
Yeah, well, in 2023, when he was in the Premier League for the first time, he said out loud that his floor form suffered because he was in the Premier League. He's already got a win this year for a second consecutive year. So he's done something right. But yeah, use the floor and use his time wisely to make sure that could give him a feed-on effect to getting back to the Premier League stage with some victories.
As bizarre as it sounds, because he's the world number one, is Luke Humphries going a little bit under the radar?
Do you know what? I think he's gone under the radar ever since Luke Littler's been on the tour. I think we look at media and we look at who is garnering the headlines as the young sports personality of the year, the now world champion and the world number 2 who's trying to gain on Humphries in the rankings. I have said all along that Littler being around is a good thing for Humphries because it means that he can be world number 1, he can be world champion in 2024 and let somebody else take all the media heat. Because we reference Littler before Humphries a lot because he's a media sensation, not just a dart sensation. So, yes, he's under the radar as world number 1, but he's not the first person to do that. Mm-hmm. You look at Rod Harrington, you look at Alan Warren a little, you look at Peter Manley, Colin Lloyd, they all went under the radar because all of the attention went to Phil Taylor.
So let's have a look then to the end of the season. We've seen half of the league phase now. Who do you like the look of for the top four?
Littler, Humphreys. I'm going to put a question mark against Price because the last couple of weeks he hasn't looked as capable, but I still believe on a 60-40 basis in favour of the Iceman that I think he'll make the playoffs, and I think there's going to be a scrap for that fourth position between MVG, Aspinall and Cross.
It's bubbling up nicely for the O2, isn't it?
It is. Looking forward to it being at the O2 because the finals historically do go there. Not always. During sometimes it has gone elsewhere, like Berlin, with that wonderful final between MVG and Cullen. But Berlin is the next night. That's always going to be a fabulous occasion. But yes, it's bubbling up lovely.
Who wins it?
Can't say anything but Littler at this stage. He's just better than everybody else.
Should be fun finding out. Thank you for watching the Tungsten Talk here at the MODUS Super Series.